Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and thank you for stopping by yet again. Of course, all the news in the papers globally has been about, and regarding Panama, have been about the canal and its lack of sufficient water to allow all ships to go through at full loads. And sometimes they treat it as it was a big surprise. It's no surprise. As an El Nino. El Nino and its opposite La Nina are global affairs. They start way out in the far Pacific. They happen to have Latin American names because their impact is first felt negatively in Peru, for instance, with the anchovies and suddenly the disappearance thereof and everything else. It's Latin America that in past years has suffered from these two particular rather opposite weather phenomena. They have grown more and more significant in recent years. And we knew an El Nino year was coming along. What we saw from some months ago was that it could be very severe. But you can't know for a fact until it actually is underway and you see what happens. So the planning and the preparation for it was already underway long before you heard about the issue. But there are two kinds of plans involved. One is, how do we get through this period as smoothly as possible, and then how can we move a little bit more quickly on what was already underway. Very substantial studies to launch at least $2 billion worth of projects to increase the water supply. Now, the canal is fed, you might say, by two lakes. One of them, the large one, is Gatun. Actually, the canal runs through the lake, so the lake is actually part of the canal. And it also provides water for the other sections of the canal that are not in the lake. And then there's another much smaller one, Alajuela. Alajuela is much smaller reservoir, but it has played a very critical role in the past. It's not doing too badly right at the moment. It's Gatun, which is the big one, that is definitely facing problems. Now, you will hear this, that, and another thing. You hear that 200 ships, backed up when in fact there were about 130. I mean, things change frequently. We're doing what we can to get around it and so on to assist. This is a day-to-day thing. People are very, very much active on it. In the meantime, we're moving forward with making these new plans. But you may wonder, where do they stand? So what I'm going to do is, down in the description beneath this video, I'll give you a link to a website which is run right here in Panama, which will show you both of the two lakes that supply the water, and what their level is, and whether it's nearing a danger level, which will be red, or whether it's a yellow area, which it will be in one case very much, and which is a caution, we're not a good direction, and then the green level, which indicates that we're at a good level. Now, for both of these, keeping in mind that on the left-hand side, here, I'll show you one. Okay. Now, you see on the one side, you've got Gatun. That's the one that says 79.6. This is from today. And across to the right is Alajuela, which is at 226.4. Okay. It's really doing just fine, but it's very, very small, unfortunately. But now you can go in anytime you want to. It's updated throughout the day and continuously. So if there is a major change one way or the other, you will have the opportunity to actually see it occur. And if you take note today, for instance, or another day of the levels, you can tell what direction it's going in for yourself, and whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. So I wanted to share that with you. There's not much that's hidden about these things. Now, as for the projects to increase the water available to the canal, both for the canal's operation, but also for drinking water potability, the canal has responsibility across these areas. And they are responsible to the Panamanian people. And obviously drinking water is very high on the level of things that people want to have here. So they take that very much into consideration. Now, as far as the canal is concerned, they are going to, or plan to, increase water levels from 3 other rivers that currently do not contribute to the canal. That's going to require some work. The Lake Mayano, which is another reservoir but was not associated now, it makes electricity, 12% of the country's electricity. Its discharge from the hydroelectric plant will be probably piped over either to be turned into drinking water or possibly all the way over to be used in the canal. We don't know, but we do know there's a lot of work been going on for several years on this. And of course, the people that they wanted to have help, they have outside people coming in is always a good thing to do. So who do they hire to do it? But the only other people who know what they're talking about when it comes to the Panama Canal, and that's the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers who ran it for 100 years. So although their early people are long gone, some of the people who were there when the handover at the end of 1999, at midnight, December 31st, 1999, when it was handed over, officially, for 20 years, they had been making a slow but sure handover. So it was all very smooth and very, very well done, and something to be very proud of on both parts. Then they took over the Panama Canal Authority and have planned since. So when they needed or wanted outside assistance, they contracted with the Army Corps of Engineers, who are down here, have been here working with them, and an area and territory that they too are familiar with. They have a lot of the old data and the maps and so forth. But more importantly, they have the experience of dealing with things like this. And it's critical to have that kind of person around. And there just aren't any of them elsewhere. So in they come. Plus, it's like a tight fraternity, these guys and these women now who work on the canal. And they have almost, well, it's a sense of being very special. It's like the Marine Corps, once you've been with it, you're always with it. And they're very tight. They're very close friends. They always have been. It's worked out very, very well. So to have them down here is excellent. Nobody raised an eyebrow. It's exactly what we expected people to do, of course. It makes sense. So they're underway doing that. It will be very interesting to see how that comes out. And in the meantime, you can keep an eye through that link and see whether or not we're being successful. Hi, I'm back. I was gone for a little while, so if the lighting looks a little different, it is. Anyhow, I want to just sew this up, so to speak, bring it to an end, by mentioning a few things regarding all the activity that's going on in terms of climate and weather, emergencies and what have you all over the world and so forth, without getting involved in the politics thereof, okay? I know it's a hot political issue everywhere else. It's not here. Here we look at things a little differently. I mean, you will find people who are avidly climate change people and avidly climate deniers. I mean, both groups are represented. But the great bulk of the population simply accepts it as it is and has confidence that the Canal Authority knows what it's doing. They did a brilliant job of it when it came to predicting what we needed back in 2004 when they started planning. In 2007, when they brought forward a referendum to actually build a canal. They brought it to a referendum because they wanted the people to have the opportunity to say, no, it's too big a project, it's too expensive, it's too much debt. And that was left to a wide open discussion here. I was here during the whole process. Everybody got a chance to speak. And that was 2007. It was passed 4-1 margin. It was overwhelmingly. What was amusing was that the president, at the time of the opening of the canal in 2016, the newly expanded canal, was also the leader of the opposition to the construction of that expanded canal. So there was a little irony involved in that. However, that's what happens sometimes. The key issue here, though, is this is going to be with us for a long time. I suspect we're going to see more and more of it, and that's all there is to it. People are very sensitized to it. The whole issue, and we know people coming down are concerned about it. We know they have their different viewpoints. Our simple request here is that you're welcome to believe anything you want to believe, but we would prefer that You be tolerant of ours, and we'll be tolerant of yours. Just you be sure to be tolerant of ours, and everybody's going to be just fine. But we were richly rewarded by getting out in front in the early part of this century and taking on this immense project to expand the canal, which is, at that time, was very controversial. People said, are you sure that we're going to require it, that there'll be enough new business to make it worthwhile? Well, yeah, it was overwhelmingly so, and almost immediately, within the first full year, it was represented a majority of the revenue coming in from the canal. Many fewer ships coming that way, but they're much larger, and they pay big fees to get through. Now, both the old canal and the new canal, you might call it, they both operate, and they both continue to operate, and each one plays a critical role. But together, they're fantastic benefit. Had we only had the old one, we'd be in big trouble today with the pandemic and everything else, because we would have nowhere near the financial depth that we had then to be able to deal with so many things at the same time, while other countries had nothing even remotely compared to it. And even though we go through a difficult time now, and we may see a reduced contribution to the national budget that happens at the end of September, which is called the end of the fiscal year, we'll see what happens when that comes around. We may not make the $2.5 billion level that the canal had set as its goal for this fiscal year. We may run short of it, but on the other hand, we may not. We don't know. We'll see when we get there. It's just a little over a month from now. Then after that, the next fiscal year begins, and that's the challenging one. Because if we don't start getting some really serious rains here, October, for example, is the heaviest rain month in Panama City area, and November is in some areas, and so forth. If we don't have that, we're going to be in pretty sad shape when it comes time for the dry season to show up, and especially if it comes early. And that's not going to be a good thing at all. So we're not going out of business, folks. We're going to be here to survive. But we are working our butts off right now to get out in front of this one, just as we got out in front of the need for a bigger and expanded canal years ago. And we've got everybody and his brother working on it very hard here. We're quite unified in that. Now, there will be disagreement as to what to do exactly, how to deal with it. Oh, rest assured, this is a political year as well. Nobody gets away with anything here without it being criticized. But the point is that it's a democracy. We've done it before. We'll do it again. We'll get through the election process. But out of it is going to come, we hope, a policy. Now, the reason that I'm concerned is that I am going to go on being concerned, and so should you, for some time to come. We need to keep all this in proportion and just not worry about what somebody tells us is going to happen in 50 years or 5 years. Whether nothing's going to happen or something horrible is going to happen or something wonderful. No. It's what's happening now. What we can see in the next few years. The momentum tells us we're moving in this particular direction, and unless something interferes with it, it's going to continue in that direction. Okay, simple physics, and that's what the climate is all about. So, in that case, we need to be prepared. We need to look forward and deal with what we've got now and what we don't want to have happen in the next few years, or maybe the next 5 years, 5 to 10 years max, because it's constantly you have to change. You constantly have to be agile and get out there and deal with reality and not just politics. Leave that to the politicians. The rest of us have something better to do. Now I'm going to show you a map. This is an interesting one in Canada. You're probably well aware that they had terrible fires up there. We certainly saw down here the photographs of yellow and orange skies in Chicago and New York and what have you from the ash and the fires blazing away, and huge fires they were in Canada. And it was astonishing. Nobody ever dreamed that would happen all the way down in New York City. I mean, come on. And Chicago? No. Chicago, maybe. It's a lot closer to Canada than New York City is. Still, it was astonishing to see it. Of course, I haven't seen any of it for quite a while and just assumed they've got it under control now. That was a passing phase. Thank God that's over with. But in effect, a lot of things that are going on here and have been going on for some time are still going on in one form or another. Another one became the crisis of the day, so to speak. And now we're the crisis of the day, with the canal having water and some of the percentages of global, some of the news sources, the good ones, getting their numbers mixed up. But it's, you just sort of stand back and just let it go, because it is what it is, and we're dealing with it. But whatever the case may be, we at least are where the eyes are attention, where the attention is focused now, and it will be somebody else, perhaps. Well, look at Athens is burning in, and they're a mess. But that's been around for a while. Who's the next crisis? I don't know. But it will happen, and then we will suddenly sort of fall into the background. For us, it's going to work out over months and months to come, the next year or two. So it's an ongoing process. Well, it turns out it's the same for Canada. And this map of Canada, which I'm showing you now, those red dots are fires that are out of control. And that's, by the way, that map is taken today, August 27th of 2023. It changes, it's dynamic, it changes every day. So those red fires, those red dots are fires that are completely out of control, and the yellow fires are those that are being held. You can see that on the right-hand side has some of the explanation. And that means that there's nobody's winning in that particular struggle, but at least they're not growing. And then finally, you have the ones in blue that are still burning, but are under control. And then the others are simply those in Alaska, for which Canada doesn't have any responsibility, but they make note of it because obviously the two countries, fires can cross borders without any difficulty. So they let you know what's up there too. Now, look at it. I mean, it's astonishing. When I saw this, I was really quite surprised. 2-3 weeks ago, when I was first introduced to it, I sent it up a few days ago to friends in the North, and they all just were stunned. They had, apparently, even in the U.S., they are no longer aware of what's going on. The fire, and when you read more deeply into it, you recognize that the anticipation is that some of these fires will continue right straight through winter, and will still be around next spring. And some areas, they may not be on fire above ground, but they will, as they say in English, we say smoldering underneath the ground. I mean, the intensity of the heat here in this is a very bizarre situation. I've just never seen anything like it. So it's still conceivable. Let's hope it isn't. Let's hope they have a frigid winter and they get the darn thing stopped. But if they don't, this could go on again next year, or something like it, if not as bad. One has to have some faith that things are getting better. But this is what we're going to have to deal with. It's not just today and tomorrow. It's not just Panama or just Maui, or not Athens, or just Texas or California or Florida or Alberta, the Yukon, so forth. It's everywhere, and the problems piles up. We've got to deal with them as best we can. And all we can do here in Panama is to focus on ourselves and do what we can to protect ourselves and to protect you, should you come down and live here, or at least come down and visit, and residents and citizens alike. Otherwise, there's a terrible price to pay by doing nothing and not being prepared and not having any sort of agreement in society as to what to do next. We're trying to avoid that. We've avoided it in the past. It's one of our great strengths. I hope we will continue to. And I trust that others will have that same ability to pull it together and to act as a group, to at least deal with the results and argue about what causes them later. Right now, let's just deal with them and try to protect people. And I think I'd be a lot happier. But I will continue talking about it only because how it affects Panama. I mean, your country, it's your business. Here, it's ours. And it's particularly, well, it's all of us, including residents, most certainly. But particularly, of course, the citizens who are about to go through an election year. So we are going to be intense about the whole topic, and I will share things as they come along that may have some significance to you and to any visit you come or relocation you may decide to make in days to come. Whether you come to Panama or not is entirely your business. I don't care. I only concerned that if you are headed down here, that you know what you're headed for and how we deal with things, and that you're comfortable with that, because that's how we deal with things. Okay, that's enough. I got to get back and work on that newsletter some more and get it out hopefully the next week or so. I make these promises. But again, I'll have instructions below if you need to get on the newsletter to be sure you get a copy of it. Again, you can unsubscribe in like 10 seconds at the bottom of any email I send out, and there is no advertising and no money's involved with it at all. It's just that 2 or 3 times a year that I actually send out what I call my report from Panama, and it usually covers quite a bit of ground, and people look forward to it. And so, in that spirit, you can find that. You can subscribe for it down there, or you can wait, and I'll be announcing it here if you happen to come in during one of those videos. I usually do that for 2 or 3 videos, then I drop the subject as well, move on to other things. So, good enough. Good to be with you today, and I look forward to doing that again soon.